Pawan, hi. Good to have you with us.
Hey, hi Ashu. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Pawan, I say this very often, right? But I'm genuinely very excited for this conversation. I think the way D2C has kind of been playing out, it's an extremely interesting time, right? And I think that makes this conversation very, very special, right? Also, the fact that you've been a serial entrepreneur, you've been at it for a very long time, right? Uh, and what becomes particularly interesting is that you've seen many cycles, right? That we've been through as a country, right? The consumers, how they've improved, right? And I think, like I said, that makes it this conversation very, very exciting, and helps us understand a lot of foundational stuff, right? And possibly how the future is going to look like, right? Because India is a culturally very strong country, right? We tend to pass on our consumption patterns to our kids, right? And I think that's this is one particular aspect that I'm particularly looking forward
Yeah, great. So I look forward to that as well. I think D2C is a
to.
topic which has been spoken about a lot.
Right,
Um, it's still getting understood. So all of us are learning in that whole process.
right.
Uh, we are also as here as a student. So yeah, lots of things happening. Yeah, look forward to this
Interesting.
conversation. Yeah.
Interesting. Pawan, before we dive into the Hoi food story, right, Hoi Pure story, right, I'd love you to run us through, the many, many things that you've done, right, for a long time, right. Tell us a little more about some of that.
Oh, it's been a long career. So I've been at it for uh, 2 decades and a half now. So I started my journey after my education way back in '95. The
Right,
education was from IIT Delhi, IIM Lucknow, whatever, and then I joined my family business. Right, so it's in '95 itself. I
right,
ran that business for about 18 years. In between, I also dabbled in a couple of other startups.
right,
In '96, I had started a business with a friend of mine from BTech. It was actually a BTech project we started together, and then I exited that business,
right,
but he continues to do that business still. In 2000, I started a company called Active Karma,
right,
which is something similar to CureFit is
right,
now. We were way early in our journey in terms of the market need. So we had to shut that business down after a couple of years of whatever
right,
work we could do. But then the in the background, this family business continued until
right,
2013. I was at the helm of it. Uh, Basically, that business was about setting up the back end or the back end technology and cooking technologies, etc., for various food service establishments
right,
like hotels, restaurants. But largely, my
right,
job was with McDonald's and KFC, etc.
right,
2013 onwards, I sort of wanted to get out of that and do something new, uh, and in order to learn what's happening in the non B2B world that I was in.
right.
uh, I started investing myself. So I became an angel investor. Since then I've been investing, but then in 2015 I I invested in a food business, and I realized that's what I want to do.
Right.
That was superfood, and that's still going on. And in 2017 is when I started Hoi Foods along with Indrajit Roy, who's my co-founder.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And that's been some journey, right? Uh, Pawan, how did Hoi Food happen, right? I mean, from doing a B2B business, right, which is, very conventional, but also a very comfortable position, right? And typically, when you're operating in an environment, right, and I talk to many, many entrepreneurs, who come from, where they've had family businesses, they've carried that family business, right? It just becomes too much more comfortable, right? And then to sort of step in and take that risk and set up something from scratch, right, is usually complex, right? And not necessarily a priority, right? What made you do this? I mean, tell me a little more about the Hawaii journey.
First of all, let me just answer the question that you raised, that uh, why leave a comfortable family business and start something new. Uh, I think I mean I would rather have more challenges than a comfortable life. Right? It's quite boring to
Right,
continue to do what was being done, and you just do that. And uh, besides not having fun, I think it's also about creating something new, right? So
sure.
you want to leave behind something which you
Right,
created, and something new
right,
that you did. So
right.
kind of thing. Yeah. So Hoy actually started off with Indrajit Roy. He's
Right.
2010 IT Delhi guy, young guy. You must
Right.
appreciate that. He came up to me with this idea, and he obviously came up to me for because he knew me that I knew me
Right.
as an investor.
Right.
So in early 2017, he came up to me and he said that there is an idea that he's working on,
Right.
which is about taking care of the demand of food in budget hotels. So
Okay.
he himself had been staying in budget hotels, and he
Right.
realized that the food experience is quite pathetic over there.
Right.
Small hotels cannot really afford a big kitchen. They cannot afford a chef or a proper cook even.
Right.
So as a result, the food experience of the guest staying there is quite horrible.
Right.
You with Oyo you could figure out, okay, what kind of
Right.
room you will get, even though there will be a bit of miss there, but still you could, in a way, check it out. But food was something, when you went there, it was largely shocking.
Right.
So he came up to me and he said that this is the problem I want to solve.
Sure.
There are 25,000 plus hotels in the country,
Right.
and it seems like a big market. What do you think? Is it solvable? And then I went back to my initial days of setting up the whole cold chain
Right.
for McDonald's and KFCs and other QSRs that I worked with from 95 onwards. And connecting those dots, learning, or getting all my learnings, I knew that this could be done.
Right.
So the whole thing, that whatever I learned from these QSRs, set up for them, and then bringing all that knowledge
Hmm.
and setting up something new which has
Right.
never been done before was
Right.
what excited me. And I
Interesting.
said, this is something which, I'm ready to plunge into this
Right.
and use my knowledge, create something new, and let's see where it goes. Uh, so yeah, that's how Hoy started.
Very interesting. And what's the current construct, Pawan? I mean, what's the current construct, right? I mean, how are you as a company, right? What are the key priority areas? What are the products that you're offering? Tell me a little more about that.
So Hoy, from the very beginning,
Sure.
is a company which stands for uh, improving the food experience of
Right.
customers. Right now, we started off with customers staying at hotels,
Sure.
right? But during COVID, we went straight to the consumer,
Mhm.
and the consumers staying at home also want better food experience.
Right.
So it's our belief, and this is our thesis, that there is going to be a huge growth in the ready to cook market in the
Right.
country,
Right.
both in the consumer market as well as in the B2B markets.
Right.
Because in both places, you need more variety. There is a need for more variety, uh, and there is a dearth of skill,
Right.
or even infrastructure that you can invest in to get that right. So it's our belief that the ready to cook market is going to grow a lot. If we can bring in convenience in cooking, if we can bring in affordability, if we can get the variety which people can cook very easily within a couple of minutes, uh, and we can do all these things with purity, right?
Hmm.
We are Hoi pure. That's why we call it pure, because we do not want any kind of chemicals or preservatives or
Right.
colors in our food. um, and we allow the consumer to use their own oil, so there is that much more comfort level as well. So the whole idea is that everyone should have a good food experience.
Right.
Everyone is not a cook.
Right.
Most of the people don't want to cook,
Right.
right? So that's the market we want to go after. So the whole construct is about that. So we do it in different ways.
Right.
One is our website, which is a D2C website,
Right.
hoipure.com. And then there is a D2B2C end, wherein we sell to hotels, but hotels sell to the customers.
Right.
So there are quite a few hotels in NCR, and we are also now getting a lot of demand from Punjab and
Interesting.
other towns where there's a long tail of such hotels. Even cloud kitchens are demanding
Right.
such products. Yeah.
Very interesting. And I think also the fact that I think one big problem is, when these are models which are kind of scaling, right, they want consistency. And I think consistency becomes a huge challenge, I think, and that becomes a very big impediment and not, for example, them being able to scale. I mean, some
Yeah.
QSRs have been able to solve it, right? But I think if you look at traditional, kitchens, right, who have an aspiration to scale, I think consistency becomes a huge issue because it's very chef driven in that sense. And I understand where you're coming from, right? Where you're trying to
Yeah.
bring in that, that basic piece, right? And which then can be, played upon with, right? Pawan, what's the key priority, right? Is it a B2B environment that you're kind of concentrating on? And I understand there are orders that are coming in, and of course, we've got through a disruption, right, during COVID. Or is B2C a priority, or has it changed with COVID in it? I mean, what's the priority right now? Because I think both of these segments are growing. They have their own independent journeys, right? I mean, Indian consumer is kind of spoiled for choice, right? On both of these areas. So how are you prioritizing?
So our priority is clearly D2C.
Right.
Right. So it's our website, and of course,
Right.
we are now getting onto other channels, other aggregator channels like Big Basket and Instamart and Grofers, etc., wherein our products can also go. So that's the B2C angle. We don't call e-commerce D2C. It's our website which is D2C. So, but our main focus is D2C.
Right.
Our D2C efforts, our marketing, our communication, it creates a funnel
Right.
for our business in other channels, whether it's a other e-commerce business or it's a hotel business or
Right.
a cloud kitchen business,
Okay.
wherein a lot of business that we are getting today from the hotels, from the B2B part that we
Right.
call them, is because of our D2C
Mhm.
website, because people are looking at what we are doing.
Right.
They are seeing what kind of convenience we are bringing in. They realize the importance of creating a larger menu for their customers. So
Right.
they are calling us and saying that we need this product. uh, just somehow figure it out, how are you going to reach that out to us.
Right.
So there is no extra marketing we're doing for that.
Right.
There are a couple of phone calls. So there is a sales team which does that
Right.
work. So obviously these kind of sales are done offline. I
Right.
mean, the let's say onboarding of the customer is offline, but then
Right.
everything goes on online once again. So priority is D2C, and D2C will continue to build our brand, and
Interesting.
it will continue to bring more customers to us
Right.
in the other businesses as well.
Very interesting. Pawan, typically supply chain is a huge problem, right? When you're looking at anything in food, right? And we're a complex country, right? The palette is different. Our priorities are very different, right? Across each of these areas, right? How do you solve for that? I mean, how do you solve for consistency, right? I mean, and D2C, like we discussed, right? Consistency is very, very critical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong on that bit, right? Experience on event one and experience on event two and experience on event three has to be extremely consistent, right? How do you
Yeah.
solve for that?
Yeah. So, see, I have, as I told you, that I was working with these QSRs
Right.
in the mid '90s, and that's a time when cold chain did not exist.
Right.
The whole food supply chain did not exist. In the '90s, the only thing frozen which could travel was ice cream,
Right.
and that also very, very locally, right?
Right.
So you will have a quality ice creams which will have a plant in Delhi, and these carts will go around selling ice cream.
Right.
It was very tough for you to get ice cream from South India to India, almost
Correct.
impossible. North India,
Right.
it was almost impossible.
Mhm.
So while I was setting this up, the great thing that I learned at that time was from a company called McDonald's. For
Right.
me, it's the largest, the best supply chain management company in the world.
Right.
McDonald's has over 60,000 restaurants across the world,
Right.
right? Their burgers taste the same no matter where you go. The
Right.
restaurants smell the same, right? So
Right.
it's an incredible brand which continues to attract kids and continues to give the same quality of French fries
Right.
no matter where they are. Now, if they are able to bring in that consistency across almost every country, they are in over 100 countries, right? So,
Right.
and if they can do that, why can't we do it for Indian food,
Right.
right? So, the the trick lies in getting your recipes right,
Hmm.
in getting your SOPs right,
Right.
and then monitoring the temperature as the product travels from your kitchen to your warehouse, to your outlet,
Right.
uh, and then the final regeneration, right? So it's a whole package,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the knowledge which I learned, some of my other partners learned, and we all brought that knowledge together to build this in Hoi. Consistency. See, what happens is for every brand,
Right.
right? It's not about food. For any other product, in fact, the experience has to be same.
Right.
You may like it or you may not like it, but the brand exists because of a promise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that promise has to be consistent. If the
Absolutely.
promise keeps changing or keeps failing every time, the brand will never form.
Right.
So the first thing that you have to do is to bring consistency, and that's what we worked on.
Right.
And consistency in food can come only by setting up right SOPs, by having centralized production, and controlling the recipes, etc.
Very interesting. I would love to sort of continue on that question, right? But I'm gonna take a side step, right? I'm gonna talk about the consumer side, right? 2020 has been extremely eventful year, right? In an extremely bad way, and also in a good way, right? A bad way in the sense because COVID happened, it touched each one of us, right? We lost many people, within our circles, so on and so forth, right? In a good way because it made us responsible, right? It made us a little more creative. And food, for example, was one area where people spent a lot of time, right? How have you seen that for a brand which is a direct to consumer brand, right? Which essentially wants to offer a very consistent experience, right? And a diverse experience, right? How has been that year for you?
Yeah. So as you rightly said, I mean, COVID has been a terrible disease for every one of us, right? So we can only see the silver lining,
Mhm.
and I think that's what I would rather focus on.
Right.
Uh, COVID actually accelerated a lot of changes in behaviors.
Right.
There were changes happening slowly, uh, uh, but sometimes we don't realize those changes.
Right.
COVID actually accelerated a lot of those things. A lot of online gaming, online education, home entertainment,
Right.
OTT are examples of that. So for us, we saw this very early
Right.
in April or May
Okay.
last year.
Right.
During the first wave, during the first big lockdown, those were really terrible lockdowns.
Right.
Uh, and that's the time when we realize that people are stuck at home.
Right.
They're not able to go out. They're not able to even order things, or they're very scared of ordering things. There were some issues of, I think, one of the pizza companies having, a COVID positive guy, and the whole delivery thing went. But
Right.
lots of problems were happening.
Right.
So we realized that no matter what, people still want better food, right?
Mhm.
So you only that much you can eat dal chawal sabji, right? So
Right.
you want to have your momos, and you want to have your
Right.
kebabs and stuff like that. So that was our silver lining,
Right.
because we were already doing it, right? So
Mhm.
we were already doing it for the hotels. We were already doing it for our own cloud kitchens,
Right.
and that's the time when we realized that since those businesses are anyway suffering,
Right.
might as well focus on the new stuff which we can do now. So we
Right.
started our website in June last year, which is hoipure.com.
Right.
And we started launching this ready to cook momos,
Right.
ready to cook kebabs, and other snacks, and many other things. We were trying out what's going to
Right.
sell a lot. And as we went forward, what we realized was that people were craving for street food,
Right. Right.
right? Because street food is the biggest one which will be hit, right? Because
Right.
the lowest trust you have on hygiene is on street
Right.
food, right?
Absolutely. Right.
And so momos were a crazy hit, and
Right.
Wow Momo has now launched momos in the frozen category, in the
Right.
frozen ready to cook category. But it's been more than a year. Uh, we were, I remember a particular incident actually.
Right.
I had gone to one of the supermarkets to pick up something, and this was obviously when lockdown was easing up,
Right.
probably August or something last year. When I met a friend there, and she was talking to me, and then another person came, and she said, "Yeah, do you know who he is?"
Right.
And so the other one said, "No, no, no. You order Persuma momos, right? From
Right.
Hoi Pure. This is Hoi Pure."
Interesting.
And that lady was like so thankful that, because of you, we were able to have momos during lockdown.
Right.
So that's a moment when you realize that you're actually creating value.
Right.
So this kind of change was already happening.
Right.
Right? People were already accepting frozen food. The frozen food or ready to cook food was already out there in the supermarket. The
Right.
alleys for this were growing. But it was always, there was always a cynicism or a skepticism about it, that Indians like to eat fresh and everything,
Right.
which is fine. I have nothing against that or whatever. But, people are looking for convenience. People are looking for
Right.
variety, and ready to cook actually solves that at a low cost.
Very interesting.
So that was the reason why we set up Hoi Pure, and the initial success was emotionally very motivating, actually.
Pawan, I have to confess, right? And between me and my daughter, we devour, right? On the momos, right? And we love them. And I like, you're absolutely right, right? I think it just, we couldn't have thought of eating momos. I mean, frozen momos, right? But I think just the fact that we were craving for it, right? And we saw it, and we said, let's experiment, right? And I think that experiment is now kind of translated into a more consistent behavior, right?
Yes.
And I think that today the choices of eating out, and then you go back to thinking when you're out there in the market, no, there's something that we have at home, right? And we can always go back and eat that, right? How about two questions, right? How do you see this shift, right? Is this me as an individual who's talking to you, or is this a more consistent shift, right? Where people are wanting to experiment more. This is something which is setting in as a habit, right? What is your understanding of that? How are you seeing the numbers play out? How are you seeing consumers coming back to you and say giving you a feedback, right? How has that journey been, right? I mean, do you see this setting in a long term? Are we beyond that? The preconceived notion that was there, right, in the minds of many stakeholders that India is a fresh market, right? Have we crossed that barrier, and we are okay with having frozen items, at our homes and consuming that more often than not?
See, frozen as a technology for preserving food has been there for like 1,000 years or something,
Sure.
or more than that, right?
Right.
So there is nothing wrong with frozen. Unfortunate
Right.
or whatever, not fortunate. There's nothing about fortunate, unfortunate here.
Right.
But India being a tropical country, we used spices for preserving food. So right,
Right.
we didn't have snow to preserve food.
Right.
So it's our emotional thing that that frozen is preserved, and other things are not preserved. Achar is a preserved food, right? We all eat
Right.
that.
Right.
It's full of oil and spices, and that's what
Right.
preserves it. And that's how we have preserved food forever. So it's not that we always eat fresh food, right? All the packaged food that we eat, we have been eating various Indian snacks by Indian these things. So it was, it's a notion which, let's say, Orthodox Indian was or still is into that we should eat fresh. Now,
Right.
we have a brand which is called Supercorn, right?
Right.
So we actually harvest sweet corn, and within hours of harvesting, we package it. We package it in a way that at ambient temperature, it stays fresh for 9 months.
Wow.
Okay. Now, the great thing about sweet corn is that if you consume it within 3 days of harvesting,
Right.
it is good for your gut because it has a lot of fiber.
Right.
But if you consume it after, let's say, 4 or 5 days,
Hmm.
it causes indigestion. I mean,
Okay.
it's just the opposite.
Right.
Now, if you go to a supermarket
Hmm.
and you pick up what you call fresh corn
Right.
that has reached that supermarket after 7 days of harvesting,
Right.
how is that fresh? You may think it is fresh, right? But it
Right.
is already 6 or 7 days or even more
Hmm.
old, right?
Right.
So I think as information is coming out, as lifestyles are changing, people are looking also for more convenience,
Right.
and they're getting more, informed about what food is. People are realizing that it's not that bad, right? It's good to have frozen food rather than have something which has preservatives in it.
Right.
Right? So there are no chemicals needed for frozen food.
Mhm.
So as I said, there was already this shift happening before COVID.
Right.
COVID forced people to more people to adopt this,
Right.
and hence the market has grown a lot. I mean, there are many other brands which have grown tremendously during
Right.
this, which are catering to which are known as frozen food brands.
Right.
Uh, but what we realize is that people are staying more at home. People are looking
Right.
for more home entertainment. There is more OTT happening. It's much cheaper. Why
Right.
go out to a cinema hall, spend 2,000 rupees when you can watch much better content on your TV with friends, at almost no cost, right?
Right.
So might as well get some good food and enjoy at
Right.
home. So we are catering to that market.
Interesting. Interesting. Pawan, I have a question on that one, right?
Please.
On the entire OTT piece, right, and the entire influence piece, and I'll just come to that in a bit, right? But before that, how do you think the market size is going to shift, right? See, until 19, it was something which was moving in its own way. Availability was essentially being solved by many brands which are out there. But this is just fast tracking, right? How are you seeing the shift in the market sizing, right? Which is more often than not, right? A very critical question that gets discussed, right? How do you see that shift happening? Also, if there are certain numbers that you can give us on the Hoi food, for example, say repeats that you're seeing, what is the demographic which is consuming more, some of
Sure.
that.
In terms of the market sizing, right? So if you went back 3 or 4 years,
Sure.
maybe 2015, 16 maybe, what were the numbers Swiggy and Zomato doing? Right?
Okay.
Hardly anything.
Right.
Swiggy was not even able to prove that food delivery can be a business. It was actually in 2017 when
Right.
this whole shift happened.
Hmm.
There is a science behind that.
Right.
India is getting richer, right, in terms of per capita income, right? So, and there is that much more disposable income.
Hmm.
And the young people who are largely on screen
Right.
do not really want to go travel and waste their time in traffic and do things. They want everything more and more instantaneously, and this is the
Right.
big population of the country, right? we are
Right.
we are talking about 18 to 30 year olds who are earning decent money now, uh, and they want more convenience, and they
Right.
want everything delivered to them. They don't really want to go out and get fetch things and whatever, and that's what
Right.
Zomato, Swiggy, Amazon, Big Basket are counting on, right?
Right.
How many orders Zomato is delivering today in a day? I think they're probably doing a couple of million or something like that.
Right.
So, look at the size of that market, and they're
Right.
expected to be 5 times of this in another 4 or 5 years. And
Right.
it's a duopoly. There are two guys who are doing that. This is the market which we are targeting,
Okay.
right? So we are saying that people are ordering, who are ordering a couple of times a week,
Right.
right? Or maybe more, in fact. So we want to give them ready to cook food,
Interesting.
which uh, which they do not have to order every time,
Hmm.
or that food is actually not deliverable.
Right.
I mean, think about chola bhatura, right? I mean,
Right.
that evokes a lot of emotions,
Yes.
right? So if I don't know if you ever ordered chola bhatura, you will never
I,
order chola.
no, no, I will never.
If you want the bhatura come out straight from kadhai, and you
Right.
want to poke your finger in it, get the steam out, smell it, and get a little bit of burn on your finger. I mean, that's the whole essence of eating a bhatura, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot get it delivered.
Right.
So, but if we can give you this bhatura in a format that it's ready to cook, you just put it in your kadhai,
Right.
and it comes out puffed up, very nice and
Right.
boiling hot. You get the right food experience, right?
Right.
So there are enough more than that foods which are not delivery friendly. I would
Right.
actually count pizza as one of them as well.
Hmm.
It's not the food experience. if you compare eating a pizza at a pizzeria directly coming out of the oven
Right.
versus which is delivered at home. This is
Right.
not the same
I
experience.
agree.
So if we can give you that same experience which you'll get in a restaurant at a lower cost,
Right.
you would love that, right?
Right.
Okay, so the market size is humongous, right?
Right.
The whole idea is that how do you create this,
Right.
niche for yourself? How do you carve that market share out of these delivery businesses? And the way to go for us has to be D2C.
Right.
When you go D2C, then there are other metrics which come in.
Right.
How will you get the right AOV? The costs are very high of
Right.
customer acquisition. How do you take care of that? The repeats become very important. Yeah, and also, how do you keep getting people back?
Right.
You need variety, right? So
Right.
we have to solve for all these things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So uh, what is very important for us is that we do not want a menu fatigue on
Right.
our website.
Right.
It's a website, it's not an app. uh, so so we don't want a menu fatigue on that. So
Mm-hmm.
every week, in fact, we launch a new product,
Right.
right? And we are catering mostly to snacks and street food,
Right.
and there is thousands of products in India which can
Right.
do that. And of
Right.
course there are desserts and sweets to add to that, which is another humongous market.
Right.
So we keep launching new products, and we keep on bombarding
Right.
our existing customers with emails.
Right.
Okay, some people may not like it, which is unfortunate for us. But without sending out the information about the products, about
Right.
new offers, in fact, a lot of our customers, we like to get their feedback before even launching products.
Right.
So we invite them to test our products, to try our products, and give feedback. So we send out
Interesting.
emails for that as well. If you'd like to participate in, this 5 products we'll send to you, you give your feedback and stuff like that. So people like those things. I think I like it if somebody sends me to try out
Absolutely. I,
something.
I I definitely love to be on that list.
Yeah, so I'll definitely send that. Send your email ID, and you will start getting things. Yeah, so that's the first thing.
Right.
That to keep on building new products, we are
Right.
very good at that.
Right.
That's our inherent strength. That's how we
Right.
started the business.
Right.
Is that we are very good in product innovation. We are very good in supply chain management.
Right.
So that's what we do really well.
Right.
That's like back of the hand kind of a stuff for
Right.
us. Uh, the second thing is to solve for the AOV.
Right.
Right. Now, if you look at most of the cloud kitchens,
Right.
and even Swiggy and Zomato, they are not making money because the AOVs are too low.
Right.
Right. Zomato is claiming right now, I think their AOVs are 250 or 300 or something, but
Mm-hmm.
before COVID it was like 75. So or something like that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure about those numbers, but it was much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Though even at 300 rupees, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot make money because you have to charge for delivery. People
Right.
are used to free delivery. People are used to offers.
Right.
So it doesn't work. So for us, it was very important to build the AOV. So
Right.
we consciously decided that we will not promise a 30-minute delivery.
Okay.
We will promise a 3-hour delivery.
Right.
And we believe that our consumers are doing a planned purchase. They are
Right.
not doing a purchase मेरे को अभी खाना है. They are
Right.
doing a purchase for, okay, I'll eat it tomorrow, I'll eat it over the weekend, our
Sure.
friends will come over, then we will have it together, kind of a thing. I'll keep it in
Right.
stock. I feel like having momos whenever I'll eat it. So it's a
Right.
planned purchase.
Sure.
So we give them incentives
Right.
to order more, right? So and since it's a 3-hour delivery, we can also club orders, so our
Right.
delivery cost reduces.
Interesting.
So our AOV is over 900,
Very interesting.
right? So now the math starts to work.
Right.
uh, Customer acquisition, if you use Facebook and Google, all these other channels,
Right.
performance marketing, it's very expensive. And
Right.
every month they keep increasing the rate. it's almost like you are raising money to give to Facebook, right? So it just
Right.
keeps, it's like a proper funnel which
Right.
money keeps flowing from our bank to their bank, and nothing really concrete comes out of that, in my opinion.
Right.
Uh, so what is very important for a D2C? The third thing very important is to have high repeats.
Right.
If you have acquired customers but have not won over them,
Right.
then you will only be spending money on customer acquisition.
Right.
It's a zero sum game. It will never end. So we focus a lot on repeats.
Mhm.
As I said, we send out a lot of emails. We do much more engagement with our
Right.
consumers by giving them more offers, by asking them to try our food and other content, etc.,
Right.
etc., other marketing that we do. And of course, we use influencers, etc., as well for that.
Right.
So our repeats, let's say about 60% of our orders every month come from our existing customers.
Right.
So only 30 or 40% comes from new customers.
Mhm.
So which again gets the math completely right, because with this we become first order profitable.
Right.
In a food business, that is extremely important,
Right.
because in food business by nature the consumer is looking for variety.
Mhm.
There you cannot expect loyalty in food.
Right.
You have to agree that your consumer will not be loyal to you.
Right.
So only then will you start finding solutions to solve that problem.
Right.
If you're going after brand loyalty in food, I eat 5 meals, I want 5 different foods, so
Right.
why would I be brand loyal? I'm not even cuisine loyal.
Right.
So it's very, very tough. So these are the things which we worked on. So our repeats are pretty decent.
Right.
Uh, about 10 to 15 customers of ours order every month,
Interesting.
which gives us 60 to 70% of our total business.
Right.
Uh, and we have started using a lot of alliances and influencers, which also give us that much more business at a lower marketing
Interesting.
cost.
Very interesting. Pawan, I'm going to move into some very interesting points that you highlighted, right? And I think that just makes the conversation a lot more interesting. Right? I have a bunch of questions on the points that you've made, right? My first question is essentially, and I completely agree, right? Food, you want variety every single time, and I think that's a constant question that even in a house, I think that's like the most debated question, right? What khane mein kya khana hai? What are you going to eat? What's the next meal like, right? It's so complicated, right? Now, what has happened is that COVID particularly, right? Given that all of us were locked up, right? And this is a question that I ask each founder, right? Because uh, this is something which is very significant in their journeys, right? And that is that the arbitrage that existed between markets, right, kind of reduced because there was content which came in and filled, right? So somebody sitting in a Kanpur, somebody sitting in a Delhi, somebody sitting in say a Pune or a Nagpur or wherever, right? Essentially was literally looking at the same content, right? Which essentially means that the influence was similar, it was predictable, right? The aspiration possibly was, there could be a small variation in the aspiration, but aspiration essentially also kind of emerged out of that, right? Um, but what it also did was, like in food business, right? Even in content business, more is more, right? People are watching so much of content, right? The aspiration is now to eat something and consume something which is available in the Western countries, right? And that influence is changing consumer behavior each day, right? How complicated does it makes for you? I mean, like you said, right? You're launching a product every single week, right? What goes into selection of that product, right? I mean, are you mapping this influence in some way, saying that this is what my customer is going to want, right? And because more often than not, where we are as a country, right? We don't have an established requirement, right? This is more, you put it out in a great packaging, a great product, and because disposable income is increasing, they possibly go out and buy, right? What is going into that? I mean, how are you tackling that entire piece? I mean, what goes into product selection, right? What goes into mapping these customers, right?
Oh, very interesting question, Ashu. I think this is the essence of every food business.
Sure.
Uh, since the consumer is looking for variety, since the consumer is always trying to look what's new, what's trendy,
Right.
it is most essential for any food business to always remain on their toes.
Right.
Uh, Within 3 months, menu fatigue happens.
Right.
You look at even a KFC today, every 3 months they have some tweaks in their menu.
Right.
Right? There will be one or two items which will always stay, but
Sure.
there will be other 10 which will keep changing.
Right.
So Cadbury's launches 3 new chocolates every year.
Right.
Right. So it is, if those kind of huge brands have to do it, I
Right.
think smaller businesses have to be much more nimble,
Right.
much more watchful of trends, because not only they need it, but also they can do it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important to watch the trends.
Right.
What happens in the Western world does come to India. We do get influenced by that. Not everything comes here, but we
Right.
do get influenced by that. There is a lot of talk going on about vegan and plant-based meat and other such diets. How successful they will be, only time will tell.
Right.
But then, as a brand which wants to uh, acquire customers and fulfill all their needs,
Right.
all their different needs, we have to have that variety.
Right.
Uh, so I think so we are pretty much clued on to that. Um,
Right.
there are various ways of figuring out what's trending. It's I think Google solves all the problems. In fact, all such problems at least.
Right.
Uh, we are able to get a lot of data on that, uh, and there is definitely there are experts who we are in touch with, and there are lots of people outside India.
Right.
Uh, you have to stay in touch with and see what's going on. There is a company in US called Trader Joe's, right? It's a
Right.
very large convenience store or a supermarket chain,
Right.
which basically does that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they bring in all the trending products on their portfolio, and they have people all across the world, catching things from there and bringing into US. Uh, and it's a 45-year-old company. They still do
Right.
that.
Right.
So we have got inspired by how they work
Right.
a lot. Uh, so in our way of selecting the products, apart from watching the trends, right? So whenever we see that there is a trend happening, we go to another food company which is already doing that,
Right.
and we try to bring them on our platform.
Interesting.
For us, it is a first step because that's the cheapest way of testing out the market.
Right.
Going into the future, we could partner with them, co-brand with them,
Right.
or launch on our own. It only depends on how the market grows, how the relationship is.
Right.
Uh, so that's the part of watching the trend. But the other thing is what we call the ABC of Hoi.
Right.
So that's a science, right? So A stands for accessibility.
Right.
What I say, that something which is not deliverable or
Mm-hmm.
something which is not easily available.
Right.
When we started off, it was momos, which were not easily available.
Right.
So we launched those. But then what is still not available is chicken keema samosa, or a
Right.
cheese kachori, or a there are so many different things you can do with,
Right.
as I said, chola bhatura.
Right.
I believe I keep pizza also in the similar category. So as I
Right.
already said, so this is the accessibility. The
Right.
B stands for brandability, which is basically, can we do something special in it?
Right.
If we can't do anything special, then over a short period of time, somebody else will copy it and it will become
Right.
commodity. So for example, there is no point selling atta, right?
Right.
Because it's a commodity.
Right.
So something which can be commoditized does not make sense.
Right.
We will not sell dal makhani, right?
Right.
Swiggy has commoditized it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Butter chicken, it's commoditized.
Right.
Unless you can create something completely different, and there are brands which are doing that, restaurant brands which are doing that. So we would do something where we can create something really special. So
Right.
that's a brandability, and the C is the convenience. Uh, that's the convenience as well as cost. C
Right.
stands for both, and that's the huge benefit which we are bringing to the consumer.
Right.
Is the consumer is the consumer finding convenience in this, right? Again, the example of a dal makhani, I can order from 100 other restaurants. Why would I keep that in my freezer?
Right.
Uh, uh, so I'm bringing in convenience at a lower cost, something which I cannot cook myself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the ABC of selecting a product.
Right. Pawan, it must be difficult, right? I mean, selecting between a fad and and something which is going to have a consistent behavior, right? It must be a very difficult one, right? Because, I mean, you're not essentially into trading. I mean, I think, fundamentally you're a company which is innovating, right? Which could mean a lot of process, which could mean a lot of procurement, which could mean a lot of assembly, and then shipping it to those points, right?
Yeah.
Uh, this must be a difficult one, right? Between a fad and something which is going to be consistent.
Yeah. So it's a fun part of the business actually. It's
Right.
uh, I do all the trials.
Right.
So I get to try all kinds of foods from various places and
Right.
brands and our own. So I spend a lot of time in our lab or our kitchen
Right. Right.
where we do this work. So yeah, I mean, this is the fun part, but it is very tough. But that's where the whole essence lies.
Right.
Uh, when there is a fad, uh, what we think is a fad that we don't know if the market is big enough.
Right.
We don't take the risk. We are a small company, right?
Right.
By various measures, we are a long way off. But when I gave you examples of some of these things which are coming, even the keto food or
Right.
stuff like that. Uh, they may or may not be fads, right?
Right.
But they are, let's say, new trends,
Right.
and we don't know the size of the market of that.
Right.
So, in such kind of products, without having enough data on what kind of market it will be, we don't launch our own products.
Right.
We partner with other producers.
Right.
We sometimes launch it as a white label. Sometimes
Right.
we launch it under their own brand.
Right.
So for us, their risk is hardly any.
Right.
Uh, but you're absolutely right in the other part that even if we are launching so many products of our own,
Right.
managing the whole supply chain, managing the SKUs is again a pain.
Right.
Uh, but as I said, if you do not have variety, if you do not have newness to your product portfolio or your menu, you will lose your customers. So this is a
I agree.
need of the business,
Right.
and you have to build your strength on that. There is
Right.
you don't have a way out of it. Uh, so we believe that uh, you know we are the people who produce recipes.
Right.
So we have a lab, we have a kitchen where we do all the development, let's say product development in the
Right.
engineers
Right.
way of talking.
Right.
So we do that, but once we have done that and we've, let's say, tried out first or two small batches in the market, we send it to our partner suppliers who
Right.
have bigger factories where everything is produced in a very scientific way
Right.
using amazing level of hygiene.
Right.
Uh, and there are, of course, economies of scale that happen over there. Uh, so, so they are able to manage uh, all the ingredients really well because
Right.
they're not only producing for us, they're producing for maybe 20 other customers.
Right.
And they have set up those systems, they have the infrastructure, technology, people to do that work.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Pawan, one thing I have to accept, right? I mean, when we experienced the momos, right? Since we spoke of them, and that was, a natural go-to because we were locked down, everybody was craving for it. Uh, One thing that I can tell you is that it stood out, right? Of course, my earlier question was more about fad, and trends, so on and so forth, right? But today, for example, if I am to eat that, right, product, I would actually go back to the one I have consumed from Arsuma. And the reason is that because of the way it's done, right? Love the thin layering, love the the juiciness in whatever the filling that is there in the momos, and it's absolutely exceptional. It's absolutely outstanding in that sense, right? So for me, my understanding or my for example, taste that I had as a benchmark, that has kind of changed, right? How important, and that's possibly happened because of creativity, right? How do you cultivate that creativity, right? I mean, and that's so difficult in a food environment, right? Because of course the complexity that we deal with, right? How do you do that, right? And I understand where you're coming from. You're saying that, listen, I'm not doing dal makhani, I'm not doing a butter chicken. It's gotten too commoditized, right? But there can always be a Hoi version of it, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
how do you cultivate that creativity? How do you capture that creativity? Something which is going to suit so many people, and which could possibly look like a fad initially, which you're possibly playing on, could become a new benchmark in the minds of consumers, right? I mean, how do you cultivate that? That's a difficult one, right? And I really want to understand. I want to pick your minds on that one. What is that goes into it?
So there is little science in that.
Right,
Mostly it is intuitiveness, right? So
right,
it's your intuition. The science is that, again, go back to Google, figure out if these are the few things which you are thinking of. Are there enough searches of that happening? You can easily do all those things, right?
right,
So I don't have to tell how to do that. So uh, how many people are looking for these kind of things,
right,
or something related to that,
right,
or watching out for a trend. Uh, you can make a lot of trips to supermarkets and see what those retailers are doing,
sure,
what is moving over there, what is not moving. So there is some research you can do. So there is some
right,
science behind it. But frankly, the saying that the proof of the pudding is in eating it
right,
is absolutely true.
right,
Unless and until you get the product out in the market, you will never know. It's a I mean, so you can do some research, you can figure out something, you can say, all right, I know that I'm 60% sure that this will work,
right.
but there is still a big gap
Sure.
you need to cover.
But I'm saying, how do you institutionalize creativity, right? I mean, for you, like you said, right? I mean, right now, you're the first test, for example, right, in terms of how you engineer that food, right? And of course, I understand the scientific part of it. There are trends, there are visibilities, right? There's a lot of content out there. You can actually draw
Sure.
some big conclusions out of that, right? But I think that doesn't help you. That just gives you an indicator saying that this could possibly move, right? At the end of the day, it's what goes into that product, right? So is this going to be, for example, extra, flavor of say a thing, right? Or what goes into that, right? I mean, I understand you are the one who's possibly taking the shots on that one, right? But how do you institutionalize that creativity, right? Because at some point in time, you're going to be a company which is going to have, say, 1,000 product bucket, right? It's going to be very difficult, right? And like I said, India is a very, we operate at many layers, right? How do you institutionalize creativity? And then D2C brand, that's very important.
Yes, it is very important. 1,000 might be a bit of a stretch, but yeah, 150, 200 will be a nice number to reach,
Right.
of our own products.
Sure.
Uh, See, I'll basically go back to my customer, right?
Right.
I need to profile my customer. I need to know my customer. D2C helps me do that
Right.
really well, um, in fact, I can talk to my customer, right? I
Right.
can directly get their feedback, and which we do. So what we do is that, within our company, we have designated, within our team, designated customers. Okay,
Right.
we call them customers,
Okay.
and they are not the guys who understand the technology of food, or how the food is made, or इसमें मसाला क्या गया नहीं गया है, लहसुन का
Right.
smell आ रहा है. Nothing.
Right.
All their job is to say मजा आया या नहीं मजा आया. Okay.
Right.
it's
Interesting.
it's it's like that. So they are the customers.
Right.
And so when you talk about your customers who are consuming your food, they are like that, right? It's not
Right.
about, they will say, okay, if they had added a little bit more kala namak in this would have become a better product. Nobody says that. They say,
Right.
"Matlab, this is not as good as the other one."
Right.
It's so th- so this is, when you profile your customer, you say,
Right.
okay, this is a demographic, this is the age, this is the salary bracket, this is the time they eat, this is how they process, this is how they store,
Right.
and these are the kind of things they're looking for. Whether they're looking for indulgent food or they're looking for a healthy food or whatever. but there are always, you know, 2 or 3 things which are very essential for
Right.
them.
Mhm.
And some of them we can manage by saying, okay, it should be a certain packaging which fits into the freezer,
Right.
uh, or it could be you know, that extra sauce which goes into this whole thing that people like to have it again and again, and for that they
Right.
will order, because maybe samosa is same, maybe the momos are same everywhere, but the sauce is what makes a difference. uh, and there are things like that, right? So all these things add up to maza aaya ya nahi maza aaya.
Right. Interesting.
So for us, while we do all the science, while we figure out things, and I only after I have done all the trials and approved something, or I feel that maybe it's there, uh, then the rest of the team comes in and they do all the trials. And most of those opinions are about, none of them is a chef, uh, and their opinions are about, okay, I think I would like it to be a little bit more cheesy,
Right.
or things like those. Very, very simple feedback, which our customer would think. And
Very
these
interesting.
people fit those demographics.
Very interesting, and I like that. I like the way you put it, Maza aaya ki nahi, and I think that's the narrative, right? I think that's what the consumer is also essentially going to evaluate you on. Pawan, we're towards the end of the conversation. My second last question to you is, right? What percentage of sales is coming from retail? Because you exist on shelves as well, right? Across one trade and D2C. And one big problem that not a lot of people are talking about is wastage, right? How are you tackling for that?
Um, so the first question first, we have about 80% business coming from our website, which is
Okay,
our D2C business.
right,
Uh, Rest of the business is coming from, uh, this is D2B2C, which I said, which is
right,
mostly hotels. There
right.
is a very small portion which comes from the retail. And
Okay,
we are present in offline retail. We are present only in tier 2 cities. We are not
right.
present in NCR, for that
Okay,
matter.
all right.
We will be available in Gurdaspur, but we will not be available in Gurgaon. Right.
Right,
So that's how it is. Um, yeah. So largely it is D2C, as I said.
right,
Um, Wastage part, you know, uh, wastage at the consumer end or wastage at our factory? Which wastage are you talking about?
I'm saying wastage in general at a production level. Typically, what happens is when you have a retail sales, right? And the product doesn't necessarily fly, right? I mean, there is a return which happens, right? And that's wastage. And even if you look at very large companies like even a Britannia, right? They also struggle with roughly under a 3% sort of a wastage, right? Across the entire portfolio, right? So I mean, that's something which is there, right? When you're
Yeah.
talking about on shelf, right? And that's the wastage that I'm talking about.
Right. So unfortunately, we have not reached that stage. uh, we believe in smaller batches.
Right,
We don't mind stockouts.
right,
We believe that stockouts increases the value of the product.
right,
So we don't care about stockouts. We make small batches and we make sure everything sells. If typically with our supply chain and everything, the way we monitor using all technologies, etc., shelf life of products is largely 6 months.
right.
We sell everything that we make within 2 to 3 weeks.
Mhm.
Uh, if we uh, if we reach a level that something is not sold for 2 months,
Right,
uh, that hasn't happened yet for our products. It has happened, unfortunately, for other brands,
right,
which we were trying out. Um, so, uh, frankly, how we avoid these kind of wastages if we reach that level is by giving offers to the customers, and
right,
maybe there is still a month of shelf life left. Then you put in offers, or you give it free, or you do
right,
trials with that,
right,
things like those. But as you grow bigger, this problem happens.
right.
This is an unfortunate part. There will be some wastage which you'll
Right.
have to cope with.
Interesting. But how I want this conversation to go on, and I think we're completely out of time. My last question to you, and something that you've experienced, right, about the Indian consumer, something that you possibly did not strike you, right? And you think is extremely important for, I think, every D2C founder out there, right? What would that one thing be that, you kind of experience saying that, this is not what we thought of the way it played out, right? But now it's become part of your narrative. And I think every D2C founder should consider it, right? What will that one piece of, say, advice or observation be?
See, first I will talk about the consumer feedback, which is obviously be more relevant for our line of business,
Right.
not for every D2C business. We never realized that how important it was for consumers to be able to use their own oil.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Uh, uh, People have enough information that restaurants and other places, not everyone, but a lot of them reuse that oil multiple times.
Right.
And more you reuse the oil, it becomes carcinogenic.
Right.
Second problem is that there's an issue of veg and non-veg.
Hmm.
Now, was that oil already used for non-veg
Right.
or not? We don't know, right?
Right.
No matter what people say, some restaurants do display it and clearly, but there is a lot of it which happens at the back end of the
Right.
kitchen,
Right.
which you don't see. So there was that skepticism about people saying that this is not a pure vegetarian restaurant, so their oil might be mixed.
Right.
So that is a huge important part for them, that now they say, okay, we are very comfortable. We
Hmm.
are using our own oil. It is
Right.
clean oil. It's a healthy oil. And we never realized that value.
Right.
Only after launching these products, doing our research, talking to our customers, we got to know that consumer is actually looking for something else that
Right.
we were not even talking about. So yeah, that
Right.
became our narrative. Apart from everything else, you can make it in your own oil.
Right.
so
Interesting. Right.
so yeah, so that's important. I think from the D2C as a whole perspective, the D2C business in India is growing at a mind-boggling pace.
Right.
The reason for that is, uh, as I said first initially, that there is a increase of per capita income, that is that much more disposable income, which is gone in. Plus, the consumer wants what was what is different from what her mother was using, right?
Right.
Or or her father was using, or so earlier Indian consumer was like, yahi acha hai, yahi de do. Uh, that's what our family has been using forever. Now
Right.
the consumer is saying that, okay, things are different for me. I'm very different from my parents. I do different things. My lifestyle is different. What is special for me?
Right.
And D2C has allowed brands to do that. We can reach out to consumers specifically,
Right.
and we can tell them that this washing powder is better for you,
Right.
and it will clean your fitness clothes better than any other washing powder.
Right.
Uh, so that's the power, and I think every D2C brand needs to figure out that small little thing that their consumer is looking for
Right.
and talk about that a lot. They have the power.
Mhm.
They should be able to, if they are able to figure out this one thing, they
Right.
can use it better.
Very interesting. Pawan, how I want this conversation to go on. I mean, honestly speaking, I think we couldn't really touch upon, the India market, right? And I would have loved to discuss the complexity of the India market, but I'll possibly save that for our next conversation when we have it next,
Okay.
right? And hopefully soon. But Pawan, it was absolutely phenomenal to have you with us, right? I mean, I think when we start to look at India, right? One, of course, there is one layer of India which is kind of wanting to break free, from the cultural baggage, for example. And then there is another side of India which is kind of continues to operate, right? Of course, they want to experiment many new things, but they still come in with a complexity of culture, right? And I think that just makes it a very complex yet a very interesting market, right? And I think we've touched upon some of those parts, right? And I can imagine how difficult it is to create a food business, right, and a D2C brand in an environment like this, right?
Yeah.
And I love the way you are cutting it, right? And I think taking it
Thanks.
step by step. It's been an absolutely phenomenal conversation, Pawan. I loved every bit of it. Thank you so much for taking the time out. It was a pleasure to have you. Hopefully, like I said, would love to have you soon and talk more about the the India market, and how you're solving for some of those very particularly sharp nuances that exist, right, when we start talking about the regional aspects of the country. Thank you so
Sure.
much, Pawan. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Same here. Thank you so much, Ashu. Thanks for doing this. It's a pleasure for me as well. Thanks.
Okay. All right. See you. Thanks, Pawan.
Bye. Thanks.